Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today we are continuing our coverage of Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal. We've already reviewed episodes 1 and 2, and we did a whole video about Nathan Fielder's entire body of work outside of The Rehearsal. Today we are covering episodes 3 and 4, and there will be another video coming in the future for episodes 5 and 6, with 6 being the finale. Just like the last two videos, I'm joined by my buddy Greg, who is currently in a hotel room because he's on the road, so that's why the background is different.
Hi! Welcome to Oklahoma City. I've got a double bed if anyone wants to join me. Come on over.
We're taking it 2 episodes at a time because there's just so much to talk about in the show that, we've covered a lot of groundwork, I think, in the previous video, so I would suggest watching that first. We talk about the show in general.
Most of our reviews of each episode is like extremely fine detail psychological.
Yeah, we're going very these are deep dive reviews, so there's
because
a lot of
if you want to talk
context.
about the plot points of The Rehearsal, it's like, okay, yeah, you could do that in a really quick video, but like that's not the beauty of The Rehearsal. And so like,
yeah, we're not here to talk about like what happened in it. We're here to talk about how the things that happened in it affect us psychologically and how they make us feel, and like the genius subtext that's all at work. Yeah,
exploring so many weird and different like avenues just in 30 minutes. It's still just a 30-minute episode.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so the episodes range from like 28 to, the first episode's the longest. The first one's like 45, and I kept hoping other episodes would be that long. I think the longest they ever get after that is, I think there might have been one episode that was like 35, but they're mostly like 32, like they're right around 30 minutes. And it feels so substantial. It feels, I think I said this before, but it has like the good qualities of feeling long, as in it feels like there's a lot there, and there's so much material. But it doesn't feel long in that, like it never drags, it never feels slow or anything like that.
Each little teeny step that Nathan makes, each statement he makes or decision he makes, like there's hundreds of decisions in the whole show, whether it's like nuanced and psychological or if it's very like on the nose. Each decision is like, oh, holy shit, that's a whole discussion all on its own.
Every little thing is worthy of analysis. Every like word he says, is like worth picking apart why he said that, how he delivered it, what his like ulterior motive is, because there's always an ulterior motive to like anything he's saying. From the very first episode, I was like, this is an unbelievable piece of work. By the finale, I'm like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen altogether. It has cemented a place in my favorite shows of all time. Like it's up there with Twin Peaks and The Wire for me. It's that fucking good.
It's insane.
Yeah.
You could talk about it for forever, honestly.
Like, I can't stop talking about it. Like, we're recording these videos where me and you talk for like 2.5, 3 hours, and then it edits down into an hour. That's not enough. I keep talking to fucking everybody about it. I'm going up to strangers on the bus and telling them about The Rehearsal.
Have you seen
I
The
can't
Rehearsal?
stop talking about it. I know, it's so good.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch it, and not everyone's going to like it. A lot of people hate this show. A lot of people are like, they think it's immoral or it's bad, and you can
it's
make a
fair,
case for
and
it.
that's exactly I think the intention too. That's how for me it could be. It's like a social experiment because it's really exploring these risky areas, I guess. And I think Sam and I are, I don't know, we're pretty well versed in the entertainment world where we don't let those types of things like affect us. Like I think both of us understand entertainment is entertainment, and there's a lot more going on than just the negative things that we talked about maybe in the first video we did about Nathan For You.
Yeah, we talked about, we spent a while talking about like the sort of having like the morality debate about what Nathan Fielder does. We were mostly talking about Nathan For You in that conversation, but a lot of that applies to The Rehearsal. I think
almost more now.
I would say definitely more, but just in our conversation, we were mostly talking about Nathan For You when we were actually talking about the morality thing, because I feel like the morality and the like ambiguity of The Rehearsal comes in more and more with each episode. And when we had that debate originally, we were only talking about episodes 1 and 2, and it's there a little bit, but it's a little more clean cut. Like we talked about the morality of like lying to Cora Skeet and stuff like that, But like each episode of The Rehearsal just gets more and more complex morally. And like one of the another thing we talked about was that moment where at the end of episode 2 where he decides to become a part of The Rehearsal with Angela. That's a very morally, gray area kind of thing. And he even like frames it as a morally touchy.
Yeah, he addresses.
He's aware of it. Yeah, and he's bringing it up
power.
intentionally. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we get into these 2 episodes we're talking about now and in our next video, because there's some really heavy shit in the last couple episodes as well. So I actually, before we jump into episodes 3 and 4, I wanted to talk about some address a couple of developments of things that we talked about in our last video, and a couple of outside the show things that I have found. People found the social media accounts for some of the people on the show. Like they found Angela and Robin on Instagram and whatnot, and their Facebook accounts and stuff. There are a lot of people who think the show is just a scripted mockumentary. They don't realize that it's actually an unscripted reality thing. A couple of people that I've convinced to watch it, they were like, yeah, it was interesting, but I couldn't tell if it was real or if it was fake or not. And then I was Googling around and I saw there's
you can't fake that kind of acting.
Absolutely.
That's impossible to act the way that they're acting.
And then I found there was a headline in Cinemaholic that was, are Angela and Robin based on real people? Not are they real people, are they based on real people? And there was a whole article about that.
Dude, Nathan's a fucking genius.
Yeah, and it really is. And we say you can't plan stuff out like that, but then the show is proving us wrong, because there are things that feel like, you couldn't plan that, and then he reveals that he planned it,
Right.
We talked about episode 1, the old man swinging by feels like a thing you couldn't plan, and it was planned. And then there's stuff like that all throughout, like the vegetable thing in episode 3, I think.
with the sticker.
Oh, I love that. Was such a beautiful way to end it. Yeah, and the whole framing of we're jumping into that moment now. But yeah, he's living in the house with Angela, and this whole idea of she wants to garden, but they're sticking to the time frame of swapping out the kids, so time is accelerated. And this is where this is a whole new angle of the highbrow art kind of commentary with the social commentary that is added in episode 3, and then it remains throughout the rest of the show, but it wasn't in the first 2 episodes. It's this idea of speeding up this idea of speeding up life, where he's got the mirror that shows him older and stuff.
Oh my god, it's so insane.
I love it. It's so it's dystopian sci-fi almost. And the thing is, it's completely unnecessary.
It's 5 shows in one show. You could do a whole show just off of the idea of creating winter when it's not winter, and
that's
being in a
thing,
house and letting time go by and what that would look like, and that could be a social experiment all on its own. It's this show is a ton of shows in one show, and I don't know if it was intentional, dude. First off, Nathan is just the best straight man I've ever seen in my life. He's the best host of this stuff. I don't know how he does it, and the team that comes up with these ideas with
his team too is unbelievable, because the production team, because when he's so involved in being in the house, there's a lot of people who are holding down the fort, you know what I mean, his whole producing team and the other writers, the people who help craft the narrative out of the nonfiction, because that's a whole thing on its own, crafting his voiceover, his VO, and also figuring out how to arrange the footage to tell the story as smoothly as possible and all that kind of stuff.
Right, because this is a TV show, and so I actually don't know how they shot it, if they shot it all and then edited it all together, or if they shot it and then kind of edited it piece by piece, did dailies and stuff like that. But if they did that, and Nathan was still living with Angela and doing that, he's not acting. He's not going in for 10 seconds and then leaving.
Yeah.
He's
living in that house.
He's in it
for weeks and months at a time.
So yeah, I'm interested to see I haven't looked at the crew list. I haven't looked at the credits to see if maybe somebody came and stepped in as second unit director or something like that, or I don't know, showrunner or something. I want there to be a documentary on how this was made.
See, I feel like that would be interesting, but I also feel like you're talking about the show as many shows combined. I kind of feel like it is already. That's another one of the components to it. It is about the making of the show. Because I love that they show base camp. They show the trailers where the extras gather, and they show the control room, and they show.
Dude, wait. The extra, is this the third episode or the second episode with the girl eating chicken? I can't.
That's the third one. Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh, we gotta get back to that.
It's funny because he's staring at her. He's looking at her. That's so funny. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to address before we jump into the episodes and focus on them explicitly was that we called fake Nathan. We got that right. That wasn't in the exact context that we predicted, but we predicted that he was going to bring in a fake Nathan Fielder to host the show, and that fucking happened.
That's true. I guess we did. We did kind of.
Okay, but now let's focus on episode 3.
Okay, so episode 3.
We pick up right where the second one left off of Nathan decided that he's going to be...
This is like the turning point, or I don't know what you would call it, of the show, where it's like, okay, this is... Now that we've seen all 6 episodes, this is like the meat and potatoes. This is going to be the show.
And I think you can see that the idea was originally that each episode would be a contained rehearsal for something. Because, episode 3 is split between continuing the episode 2 rehearsal with Angela in the house, the whole motherhood thing, and he's dividing his time between that and going off to this guy who wants to rehearse with his brother, who he's trying to get the estate money, the will money released to him, and the whole gold digger thing of the title. So there's kind of 2 rehearsals going on. One is continuing from episode 2, the other is a contained one in episode 3. And I think you can see, and also I think in episode 5 or maybe 6, he also mentions, I decided to cancel all the other rehearsals and just focus on this one to immerse myself in it. So I think you can see that the plan was every episode will be its own rehearsal. And then episode 2, the thing with the house and the mothering, just became so complicated. And I think it's again impressive that they had the insight and forethought to go, there is so much here. It would be a shame to cram it into one episode and move on. It's worth immersing yourself in and really delving into. And they made the right call on that. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree, yeah. And they did it in such a cool way, too. They didn't make it... It wasn't okay, this is a segment that is just dragged on too long. They made it interesting where each episode had a theme that wasn't to do with Angela, but it somehow tied into all that shit. It's just really great. And I was wondering every episode, how is he going to tie this in? How are they going to still be at this house? And
yeah. And I would say that's part of where his team comes in, the writers. For people who don't know, when they see writers in the end credits, they might think that means everything's scripted. What writers means in a reality TV context is they are writing the narrative out of the material that they have, and then also writing the voiceover and stuff. So it means that they're taking these thousands of hours of footage that they must have from all the different cameras in the house and all that.
Well, and guiding the show's future too, I bet.
Well, yeah, right? They're guiding from episode to episode, but also you were just saying, of giving each episode a theme that unifies it and ties it together, making each episode feel like an episode rather than just 30 minutes of a movie, so that each episode has its own little arc that contributes to the overall show's broader arc.
So we turn a corner into this new reality we're here with.
Yeah.
We start off the episode with he's in a Batman costume, I think, chasing.
Yeah.
Immediately we run into discourse about how Halloween is. She doesn't support Halloween.
Halloween is satanic. And I will go on record as saying, fuck anyone who is anti-Halloween, because Halloween is the best.
Because I hate Angela in the show. I don't know. No offense if you're watching. In the show, I just didn't. I struggle with this. I'm conflicted. I can't say I don't like somebody.
I don't like Angela.
I didn't enjoy watching the moments with Angela because it was obviously I'm so different than her. And so it's I'm how are you going to do a whole episode on this?
Yeah.
What are you
Well, so I find all the interactions with her interesting. And I'm
because her and Nathan are polar opposites. It's amazing.
Well, but also Nathan is extremely non-confrontational most of the time. So he's mostly trying to just maybe not appease her, but not like not stoke the fires, if that makes sense. Like she'll say the wildest shit, and his thing is, "Oh, okay." Like that's what that's like his catchphrase is, "Oh, okay." Which one thing I gotta highlight. I don't remember which episode it's in. So it became like a thing. Like people know, like Nathan Fielder fans know that he always says, "Oh, okay," to like the craziest shit you've ever heard. That's like a thing with him. It's like a trademark, right? And I love that in the show, I don't remember which episode it's in, but there's like a really dramatic "oh, okay," where it's like, "oh," and like a really long pause, and then he says, "okay." And I feel like that is just hilarious on an extra meta level. And I hope he's doing it intentionally, but I don't know if he is or not. Like, I hope he's aware that, "oh, okay," and becomes like a trademark for him. So he does this extremely dramatic one where he's like teary-eyed and everything. Greg is a nicer person than me. That's why he won't say that he dislikes Angela. I will say I dislike Angela. I don't like her. But I do find her very interesting, and all their interactions are engaging. I mean, it goes beyond the show. Like, if you look at her, the way she talks to people online and stuff, it's all Jesus all the time, you know.
I don't like who she was in the show.
She's the kind of religious where she's very much forcing her beliefs on other people. Like, if you're religious and you know, believe and you keep it to yourself or whatever, that's fine. You know, do what you want. Like, I don't care about that. You can believe whatever you want. But it's when you start making other people abide by your religion and trying to make other people convert to your religion and judging other people for not believing it. Like, she's full-on anti-Semitic.
Looks down on Nathan it like pains me. Like, she's like, "Yeah, Nathan, like, wake up, you know? So not everything is, you know, some fairy tales aren't fake," or whatever. I can't remember what she says.
Something
but
like
it was
that.
Just, that's what she says about the Halloween stuff. Is she's like, yeah.
She's like, yeah, and he's like, "I Googled it," and she goes, "Oh, Google is satanic too."
Yeah. Oh my
That's
God.
so ridiculous.
I love the way he navigates these conversations with her. It's so like patronizing and like definitely hurtful, but really funny for the show. At the same time, it's like kind of passive aggressive. Like if I was her, I would be like pissed at him because he's making a fool of me. But like at the same time, like these are two people that really are complete opposites and that normally would probably have a huge fight and like fight about it and not be in the same room together. You know what I mean? So the fact that he's like, I don't know, it's like almost peaceful but not peaceful way of navigating this scenario and also using it to his advantage for the show.
It's an extremely strange way to cohabitate, to say the least, you know? The fact that like they are having like dinner together every night and stuff, you know? Like that's
I wonder if it would
bizarre.
be different if she was more into him.
Like if she actually wanted to consider him as like a husband, not just the father. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like you
It'd be
can
a much
tell,
different
like,
scenario.
immediately she's just like, fine, it's your show, you know, join, fine. But like, what if like she started gaining like a connection to him and like starts really trying to like, you know, convert him or whatever. I wonder if that would be what that would even look like, but I don't think it would happen.
It would be a completely different experience, I think, and that would be interesting as well. Obviously, it's not between the two of them. They are like you said, they're like polar opposites, and it's not an opposites attract kind of thing. It's an opposites get the fuck away from me kind of thing, except for doing this experiment together.
Almost like basically just enemies playing nice.
Yeah. There's a
That's
lot
what
of
this whole entire interaction with them in the house just felt like. Just enemies playing nice.
the animosity between them is so
Like
thick the whole time.
Like a divorced couple.
Yeah. It very much feels, like a divorced couple who are staying together for the kid. It does kind of feel like that, yeah. The whole thing is about her raising the child, and she tries to turn it around on him at a certain point, more towards episodes like 5, I think, is when it really gets into it. But she tries to turn it around how like he ruined the experiment for her, which he definitely did in some ways. But also he shows that like she's making him do everything. Like she's completely taking advantage of him as like, she treats him like he's like a servant for her, you know? Like he makes her, like when she's having him like go take the cookies out of the oven and put them back in and stuff. It's like, what the fuck kind of entitled attitude is this, you know? And the fact that like he has to do like all the child rearing at a certain point, where it's like, do you even want to raise this kid, or do you just want to say you have a kid, you know?
she could have. I was kind of honestly waiting for her to not be a part of it anymore, because the times that he did interact with her, it was mainly using her for context. So like when he has the son and he wants to raise him Jewish, it was like he was using her in that regard of like, that's a conflict that you would have to deal with as a father. But like there was never a connection between the two of them. There was never any breakthrough. It was always just like, it was always like she just didn't kind of seem like, she seemed like she didn't kind of want to be there. You know what I mean? And like she didn't want to participate. But I don't blame her because it is a very weird thing that was going on. But it felt like she was more of a bystander. But I did want to talk about, so this episode is kind of like, it establishes a lot. So like he gets really into like the whole thing of like time passing, and like we learn more about the show and like the farming situation, watching the crew members switch out.
I want to talk about the farming for a while, because that is so, the farming thing, or the vegetables thing, that's another one of those moments where it takes something that could be funny, or like, and it is funny on a base level, but it elevates it to this high art. I also wanted to mention how beautifully it was shot. Like all the shots of the vegetables with the foggy exteriors and the cinematography. I don't think I really realized until episode 3 that the cinematography is like kind of gorgeous in the show at times.
It is actually really good.
Like a lot of it is shot on the like mounted cameras in the house, so that all looks pretty standard. You know, like you can't do too much with that because it's, like, they're like fixed positions.
Right.
Yeah. But then like whenever there's like, you can tell there's like there's a cinematographer at work whenever it's like a time where they're able to like set up shots a little more. It's beautiful, especially I would say the vegetable.
They didn't have to do that
either.
Like,
they didn't have to. It looks so nice, and it really just hammers home the like the higher level ideas at play, because they're devoting more like kind of artistic screen time to it. It lets it linger in a way that lets you think about it. Whereas if they just shot it in a wide master shot, it might go by and it might go over your head. Not saying you're not paying attention or whatever, but like part of what a director and editor are doing is they're giving you images, and they need to time them out. They need to like let them linger for the right amount of time so that the audience absorbs the information that they need to, so that they don't miss it, And the show just has like a perfect grip on that, of how long to let things linger, how to present things. And one of the things that the vegetables connects to that I really love and find like insightful is that Angela's out there gardening. Well, so she made Nathan like dig the holes and stuff for her, which is a whole other thing. Yeah. But then when she's actually doing the gardening, she does like the easy part, because then the crew is doing the other hard part.
Fruit. Yeah.
One of the most interesting little insights into her is also an insight into, I would say, like the broader religious mindset, or at least of like the broader like hardcore Christian mindset, which is where I think the show gets like into really great social commentary territory, is when Nathan in his voiceover talks about how he's envious of people who can so easily believe. And he's talking about, the vegetables, about how the crew's swapping out the vegetables and Angela doesn't like pay any mind. She's just like able to immerse herself in
disbelief.
Like, oh, these are grown. I did my job. I'm a good gardener. I'm going to pick these things now. Like that's how she's treating it. Now, whether or not that might be something where that might be just how the show presents it,
Yeah, she might be leaning into it a bit. Like she might just be going through the motions.
Regardless, the voiceover of he's envious of people can just believe in something that is not real. It's about the vegetables, but it's also about religion, and I just find that it's a brilliantly composed like thesis on the religious mindset at large, and I just want to highlight that because I think it's incredible. And then
and he's not even making fun of it. He's not
making fun of it
in this situation, saying like he's envious of people who are able to do that, to just be so. I don't know.
To not question, unquestioning in a belief system, Right. And also, it also connects to the immersion of rehearsing. Like the very idea of a rehearsal is, it's not a real interaction, and you need to be able to immerse yourself in it to be able to glean the benefit from it. So he's envious that she's able to immerse herself in something fake, like her religion. I guess, it's an opinion, I guess, if it's fake or not. But come on, come on. Use your critical thinking skills. Like, come on. It's like the whole point is that
I resonate with it though. I do. I resonate with that thought of like I wish I could be more content easily with things like that. I am an overthinker, so it's like, yeah. I do think it's interesting because Nathan has a hard time later on and throughout the show, even though he has all these rehearsals time. It's like being an imperfect perfectionist. Like he's doing all this work, but it never actually works for him.
Well, I feel like sometimes there are
it's
some
like the
benefits,
Nathan Fielder method, but like all the times we see him actually do it for himself, it doesn't quite work the way it needs to. Like he skimped out on telling him that he lied in that first episode or whatever, and he rehearsed it, and it's like he doesn't really. So it's good for other people, but for him, it's like it doesn't seem to even be working.
I think there are some instances where it does work for him, I think. Like, it definitely helped navigate it navigated the phone calls, right? It navigated
and that
initial
first interview, yeah.
Yeah, the first time he talks to Core, even though there was like the thing with the chair, which was hilarious, but it still worked out, So I think it does work on some occasions. But what the show's doing is it's taking that, the core of the idea, which is, can you rehearse for life and account for all these details? And the show's a great example of drilling as deep into a core premise as you possibly could go throughout its episodes.
That's where it creates that social experiment type theme.
And going back to your point about how it like progresses from episode to episode, that moment of VO that we just talked about, where he talks about how he's envious of her being able to so easily immerse herself into it, like regarding the vegetables and religion, I think that marks a turning point in Nathan Fielder, the character, and like throughout the rest of the series, like as a figure within the experiment, where he then goes out of his way to immerse himself more and more and more and try to make things even more realistic. Like when he goes to the acting class, which is episode 4, so we'll talk about that more in a moment. But
and the more he goes into it, the more it kind of gets more risky. And
he's trying to remove more and more layers of artifice by creating more layers of artifice as he goes deeper. He's trying to get to more truth by adding in more falsehoods.
It's like he's in extreme denial, like as a character. And so he just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the boundaries and getting into scary territory, which in episode 6 turns out to be like pretty extreme for him. And he realizes like what's wrong. Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. So, okay, this episode, the project of this episode was him helping out that guy.
The guy with the brother, yeah. Let's focus on that part for now, yeah. So the whole premise with him is his grandfather died.
Like each episode has a premise in regards to the whole idea of a rehearsal, even though he says like, oh no, I'm going to be doing this now. Somehow he sneaks in.
He pulls the curtain back a little bit where he says like, I had already scheduled this other rehearsal with this guy. Remember when he says that? He says I had already scheduled, meaning that like before he had planned to get into the
thing.
Before he planned to become a part of that, he had already had this other one. So then he's dividing his time. I love that he like brings the kid to the rehearsal. That shot of him like holding onto the back of the kid who's trying to run away.
What's beautiful about that is the actors in that room don't know anything of what's probably going on with him.
Yeah, he's not filming.
He probably only tells people the amount that he needs to tell them to get the shot. And then when they watch the show, they're like, oh my God. They probably thought it was his real kid. Like, you just know Nathan is doing so much more than what he's showing in the show. Like, he's probably doing a lot of, like, what's it called? Method acting and stuff like that with his character. So it's just...
Well, that's why I keep talking about how, like, I can't stop thinking about all of the footage that they have for this. Because, like... Even just in the house with Angela, they're probably rolling like 24/7 for months, right? Or at least several weeks. Imagine sifting through all that. I can't even and then crafting a narrative out of all that material. It's I keep saying it's incredible. I feel like we're discussing a bit too much. Okay, so a guy in the restaurant. He's in was it a Church's Chicken or was it a different chicken place? Was it a Church's Chicken?
I don't fucking know. I thought it was a Cane's.
Oh, yeah, Raising Cane's. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, Cane's Chicken. Yeah. So he's in that. I love that he recreated the restaurant, because of course he did. He had to build this restaurant.
Right. At this point, it's not even surprising. It's just hilarious. It's like, yep, okay.
Well, I think there are still some moments where it's surprising. Like, not to jump the gun, but in the finale where he shows that he recreated the house of the real kid, that was a fucking holy shit moment for me. Even though, like, maybe I should have been expecting it at that point. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Well, he recreated the house, and then he also recreates the house that Angela and him are living in.
Yeah.
He recreates the
Which
rooms.
is already a fake house. It's already a fake house.
Well, no, it's a real house. It's a real house.
But it was bought for the rehearsal.
Yeah. Okay, so they're at the Raising Cane's, and I don't even know how he met the guy.
And that guy was also anti-Semitic, which is like another. It's like kind of a through line for the show.
Yeah, that's definitely like a secondary, I don't know, storyline, kind of like a third storyline that's very, very underlying theme that's going on is this anti-Semitism towards Nathan.
I don't think it was like intentionally planned out. I think it just kind of arose that two people were both anti-Semitic, and then I love that he gets the tutor, the like Jewish tutor for the kid. And she ends up being like, what's the word, a Zionist? Or maybe that's not the right word. I think that's the word, a Zionist, where she's like super pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, which is also a bad thing. So he shows like the other side of it. It's not, it's not one-sided. It's not one-sided.
Without even saying anything.
He doesn't,
it's so
he
interesting
never
how
gives his opinion on
documentaries
it.
do this, where you film someone speak and like, it's all the audience's thoughts that go into it. There's none of him being like, hey, this is what I think, and this is interesting that we just learned this. It's all, we gain all this information just by watching and seeing how people are.
He says in this episode that he doesn't like lying to people.
I know, that's
what do you think about that? He says he doesn't like lying to people. Whereas in a later episode, we hear Angela say he has a problem with lying. Nathan lies a lot, she says, which is true.
I think it's the character in the show in denial that what he's doing is not lying, and that what he's doing
the
might
voiceover,
just be...
You think he's in denial in the voiceover where he says he doesn't like lying?
Yeah, I think he's still his character. Yeah, in the voiceover.
Yeah, I think so,
because he also tells other people that he doesn't like to lie either. He's like doesn't like lying. But I think it's a way of being like, we see it as what it is, but like this character is kind of in denial of like, no, I'm helping people, and I'm helping myself. But there's like a fine line, you know.
Well, I mean, I guess from
morality.
From his perspective, if he is in denial, there's a way you could convince yourself that it's not lying, but it's definitely manipulation, at least, right?
Or maybe he understands that he's lying, and he still cannot like lying, but he feels it's necessary to
it's like
do
I have to accomplish
good.
this greater, the greater good, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to circle back around to the morality debate that we had in when we were mostly talking about Nathan for You, and now talk about it in context of the rehearsal. Specifically, at least at first, I want to talk about, because me and you disagreed on the topic of exposing people. That was one of the things we disagreed on. And whether or not it was even exposing people or just kind of letting them expose themselves, you know?
Right. We disagreed mainly on the point of, you think it's fine to expose people if they're bad people. I don't think it's okay to expose people at all.
So the moments of anti-Semitism from Angela and from Patrick, do you hold your stance of the show shouldn't expose that? It should just let them be anti-Semitic in private? Because I think if they're anti-Semitic, go ahead and put that out there. Like, it's worth showing. You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard because where we landed on in that discussion was, I think it's good for the show, but I think as a morality situation, like, I want it to happen. I think I'm understanding for it to happen for the show because it's more of a social experiment. So there's a lot of things that are like very contradictory that happen in social experiments. And that's the way I view the show. So I think it's necessary to have these things. So in that sense, I think it's fine to showcase it because everything's on the table for the social experiment. You know what I mean?
But you do think it's immoral to
I do think
show
it's
that
immoral,
side of them? See, I don't think so at all. I think we do still disagree on it.
I think it's more unnecessary. It's just unnecessary in a humanities point of view.
Okay, if we're talking
because
necessity,
I believe the greater good in people, even though they seem, they say these buzzwords of like, I'm anti-Semitic. Like, I believe. Okay, yeah. So people change.
I think the two instances of anti-Semitism are different here because on two fronts. One with Patrick, you could totally edit out his like moment of anti-Semitism and the episode would still cut together. With Angela, you can't like edit that out, I don't think, and still be truthful because that's an integral part of who she is. Especially the way they go
into it later on, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole.
That's like her character is like Christian,
That's
what I mean?
who. Like, that's her thing. The anti-Semitism with her is like a part of who she is. With Patrick, I get the sense of more like I think there's a lot of people who will say a term without even realizing what it means. I don't know if you could maybe give the guy the benefit of the doubt for that.
And intelligence definitely takes part in these things, and so I don't tend to immediately judge someone.
I think that's a fair point with the Patrick guy. I think like he could at least like learn from it. From what little we saw of Patrick in episode 3, and this might be not enough to like really judge him on, but he seemed like someone who was like raised in an echo chamber and was just believing what he was taught, and he probably doesn't even see what he said as anti-Semitic because he's like never heard the alternative, and probably no one's ever called him out on it before. Just to say that I don't like, from what little we saw, he's not. It doesn't seem like anti-Semitism is necessarily a part of his, core being, like it is with Angela, where I do believe she is deeply anti-Semitic to her core.
So I want to get back to this situation with Patrick. So the theme was Nathan ultimately he had him going through these rehearsals and he's realizing, okay, with Core, everything that they did was supposed to work, but the issue was when it came down to it, that social pressure was never actually put upon Core because he was talking with an actor, and it wasn't until he was actually in the scenario that those true emotions came out of him like dodging the question and getting the pizza and doing that. And so he wanted to invoke, he's like, that is important for me in a rehearsal because that's integral. So he wanted to get that real emotion, and that to me is the theme of what he's trying to do with Patrick. And the way he goes about it, for me at first I was like, there's no way that this Patrick guy doesn't see exactly what's happening. Like he's literally like so on the nose about it, about like
the parallels with the wiping his butt and stuff.
God.
Cleaning his diaper.
I was like, there's no way. Yeah, with the diaper shit.
But I think it goes back to that thing we talked about in the last video, where like when you have no reason to question it, then or how did we frame it? It's like when you don't have a reason to suspect you're being lied to, then it's like easier to go along with things, Like the way it was broached of he's talking to this actor, and then when they're done, the actor out of character now says, would you mind doing a favor with him? He has no reason to suspect he's still being lied to because
I would have been
he's not someone who's he's not like a business in Nathan For You where Nathan's like approaching him and putting in this wacky circumstance on him. He's actively like trying to rehearse with him, and they were at it for multiple days of rehearsal in that chicken place and not getting the results. So as far as he knows, that's the extent of it. And it's not like the cameras were there when he got there. The cameras were following him as part of it. They weren't there with the grandpa. So the cameras are justified in that way. And then they start filming them from like really far away. That fucking shot where like it's out there at night and they're digging and everything and it's all dark. And then they show Nathan like behind a tree with his laptop I loved it. It was so like, because I don't think those guys even knew Nathan was there. I think he was just fully incognito. Right, which is the point. It's like cool and disturbing simultaneously.
It's probably because we feel like we are Nathan, like, and so it's like I didn't even think about that like he wasn't supposed to be there. Maybe it's because it's like we're so used to it. Like we know it's still the rehearsal, but that guy doesn't. Patrick doesn't.
What he's really pushing is that to get the full benefit of a rehearsal, he needs to not know he's in the rehearsal. Or to make the performance true, we need to get the real emotions out of him, right? Rather than faking the emotions. Because that guy's not an actor. Patrick's not an actor. He's just a guy, right? So in the rehearsal, he's rehearsing the conversation, but Nathan is trying to get the real emotion that he would be feeling in that moment. And the only way to do that is to create the circumstance for real, which is some next level mastermind manipulation in a brilliant way.
You could have done it in a different way without being so on the nose, but I think it really...
being so on the nose is what makes it funny in addition to being super thought-provoking.
Being on the nose makes it thought-provoking as well, though, because it's thought-provoking in a way of like staring at something that's so artificial yet still gaining what you were ultimately trying to gain is super interesting.
It's almost commenting on the show itself, because he, like you just said, he's staring at something artificial and sees it as true, which is like the whole idea of the rehearsal, of immersing yourself in an artificial situation to get to the truth of it.
So I have a question in regards to this situation. Do you think that... I have a couple questions. This episode brought up a lot for me. And at first I was like not with it, because I was like, there's no way that this guy... I don't know. This was a very emotional episode for me because of how psychological it was. For me, this was one of the most psychologically interesting ones. Just because of how like genuine and I don't know, if I was a psychologist, the different things that you could determine based on this episode is just insane. But my question to you is, do you think that after all that stuff happened with like the granddad dying and stuff, like in doing that, and then now coming back to the rehearsal and
you're talking about the fake grandfather pretending to die,
yes,
right?
Yes. Now, like after the fact, now that they are rehearsing it, and Nathan literally goes like, I need you to just put your shit, aside and continue with the rehearsal.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Do you think that the guy caught on?
I don't think so. I think because...
With the actor then saying, like, I don't know, I don't want to... He might... Like, the minute they, like, came into play, it came back into the rehearsal, the guy sits there and goes, I just want to get some things out of the way. Like, I know my grandfather said he owed you some gold. Like, that was just, like...
Well, okay, so I think...
So do you think he caught on?
I
don't think it matters. That was the other question.
No, yeah.
Like, it doesn't even matter if he did.
I think maybe on some level, but not like fully consciously, if that makes sense. Like, he probably maybe realized after the fact, or maybe like partially realized in the moment. See, the fact that he stayed in the rehearsal of the character makes me think that he hadn't caught on. Because like when he's doing I feel like if he had caught on, he would have started using the actor's real name and the fake grandpa, but he was still calling the actor by his brother's name, and he was still talking about the situation that he originally went there to rehearse for. That's what makes me think he's still, at least, I think he has to at least partially still be believing.
Well, he's only doing
facade.
that because he's literally commanded to do so. Like Nathan, like they were arguing about it, and then Nathan said, like, put your shit aside. We need to like get back to work. Essentially, he literally straight up said that.
So I think if he caught on,
like, I know you're pissed at this actor, but like, let's move on.
I think if he caught on, he would have broached that directly. So he's maybe, and also like if he thinks he's getting gold, he probably wants to believe it too. Is the other thing. He probably wants it to be true. I know gold is ridiculous, but I mean there is gold in the world. It's not,
You know what I'm saying? Like Nathan could have done this in such a different way.
But think about this, right?
He could have made it more believable.
Gold out in the desert, and they wandered around 4 hours looking for it. How crazy would that be to fake? They did fake it, but how insane is that to fake? Like, now that the rehearsal has come out, season 2 is probably going to be more of a challenge to get away with the crazy. I mean, maybe not, but people who have heard of the show, they're going to be on the lookout for stuff. But, Mike, we got to remember, they went out there into the forest when it was daylight, and it was like 1 a.m. when they finished, right? Like, he says in the VO, they spent hours searching around. Yeah, and like they camped out. They like had like dinner out there, like camping in the forest, right? So if you were out there and you spent an entire night wandering around looking for this guy's treasure, and then you dug a hole and you did see gold in this pit, and he took it and all that, you probably wouldn't question that it was fake, right? Like if you were actually in the, from the outside, it's like, yeah, obviously that's manipulated. But when you're in it, if you're actively digging a hole that you spent hours looking for and you do find gold in there, you're probably going to think that's real gold. You're not going to think that was planted, right?
And that's why I feel like in the moment, yes. But then I feel like no matter what happens in life, when you're reminiscing, I guess, or when you're thinking about the past, it's easy to look at it as a tangible situation. Whereas in the moment, he's in the moment, so maybe he like believed it. But then when you're done with that moment, I feel like when he came back to the rehearsal and all he's hearing now is him talk about the gold, it kind of brings to light the ridiculousness about it, I guess.
It does, and so, for sure. And it's possible he, fully realized it and just stuck with the
however,
rehearsal.
I feel like going with that, it makes me think like the issue is still at hand, right? And I think this guy is seriously struggling with people in his life calling his girlfriend a gold digger. And that's clearly like an issue for him, like a serious issue for him. And I think that's what brings him to tears in the first place when he does actually get emotional, because of maybe this scenario is such a clusterfuck for him now mentally that even though it's all so ridiculous, he's still able to get to that point. And even though he's in such a clusterfuck moment, he has to continue with this rehearsal. And so maybe, I don't know what happened psychologically, but I really truly believe that he got there. And he got to that point of what... I feel like he got immersed to where he was able to block everything out and just essentially talk to himself of how he needs, what he wants. He like is using the people around him as like camaraderie to have an audience to feel like he can say what he wants to say to his brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so a lot of talk has been made, I think especially about this episode, about how it's like horrible manipulation and Nathan Fielder is a awful person for doing this. You can make a case for that, whatever. And it's definitely extremely manipulative, like there's no denying that. But I do think that like in the end, I think it really did help this guy. I think he had an emotional breakthrough. I really do. I think this was like radical therapy. I really do too. I think it was like radical therapy that was actually effective.
Well, that's actually a really hard thing that he was going through.
Yeah, it's such a loaded issue that he went in there with. Yeah,
it's his brother,
issue.
That's family,
right.
His girlfriend, and like these people's perceptions, and like there's a lot of layers going on there. And like it's not an easy thing to do to stand up to your brother, especially if the brother is truthful in this and that he's holding this money, because that is a solid point. That is a solid point. But like, yeah, I love this episode for psychological reasons. And I do think he went through and had a breakthrough.
Yeah, I think he went in there for a rehearsal to get like a monetary goal, but what he came out with was I think a positive therapeutic experience.
So the way we end up after him crying and having that breakthrough is he leaves right after that, and then he doesn't come back. Do you think he went off and told his brother? Do you think that was enough for him as a powerful moment for him for closure, and that he feels like he could have said those things to his brother, but I guess in a way he did, and that's all he really needed, is to feel that moment of confidence. And then now with his brother, he can like, I feel like psychologically, I know I asked you a question, but like I feel like psychologically with someone like in that situation, maybe he was questioning and feeling what his brother was feeling too. Like maybe my girlfriend,
totally.
Maybe that's what made him so emotional, is like these people are making him think this way towards his girlfriend, and he has never really had a chance to like really get emotional about how serious it is that this pisses him off, that people, and now the stranger is saying that his girlfriend's a gold digger, and maybe that's all he needed emotionally and now he can look to his brother and say like, no, like, like whatever it is, it is. And maybe it's not as much of an issue. But my question to you is, do you think he went to his brother after this and that was helpful in his life? Or do you think he just left and never came back because it was just too much for him to rehearse anymore?
I think it was a case of he had the emotional breakthrough he needed for himself, and that was enough. He no longer needed what the rehearsal was supposed to supply because it supplied something else. And I don't think he was like aware of that. I think that was just like the subconscious ramification of it. I also think
because usually with the rehearsal, the cameras then follow him into the moment with his brother.
Yeah, I think that was the plan. That was totally the plan for the episode. And then he disappears. He ghosts Nathan. I think there's also a chance that he also just like a lot of guys don't want to show any like emotional vulnerability. So the fact that he did have that emotional like breakdown, was like crying and stuff, I think he might have just been like embarrassed and didn't want to face those people again who saw him that way. Yeah. I think that might be part of it. But I love that. I love that it's a question mark. The fact that he disappeared, and like when Nathan's wandering in that like empty carnival looking for the guy, and like the guy's phone is dead or off or whatever, and he just over the voiceover goes, "I never saw him again." That's such a beautiful moment where like it would be so easy for that to feel like a lack of closure in an episode of television. The fact like we didn't get an ending to it, that we didn't get the closure that we were looking for, but instead it feels so perfect that it goes unresolved. It feels like that's the way it should end, and that's the way it had to end.
So that's kind of like that, but there was also another theme going on with this episode, and that's that Nathan wasn't feeling like he was as much a father as he could be. And so he tries to solve it by bringing his kid to work. And then I think they end up getting a nanny, but the theme becomes like he is starting to realize... I don't think they did
get the nanny. I remember they like interviewed one, but...
Yeah,
we never saw her again, right?
No. They talk about it.
They talk about the cameras, and they show the like timer up top, which is interesting. They hadn't shown that before.
So this whole episode, Nathan is joining Angela, right? Because last episode it was for Angela. Now we're starting to see little inklings about how we're starting to see the Nathan For You character come back, where it's like little bits more about him and how he can personally, I don't know.
For his own like
benefit,
social development and personal advancement, which wasn't really a thing in the first two episodes until the very end of the second episode when he
and now we're starting to see like that kind of come to fruition a bit more. And so with that, he's realizing he's not getting as much as he wants out of it. He's realizing the conflict is, he's not actually getting to see his son as much and spend as much time. Well, that gets pushed
further in the next episode too, when he goes back to LA.
Definitely, but yeah, exactly. But in this episode, it's kind of like he starts trying to solve that by taking his kid to work, and it kind of ends in the idea that they were like, he was realizing he has a lot of work to do, and this conflict of like, even though he wants to do this experiment, he still has a lot of work to do. Like, this is a show he has to run, so he has to leave a lot. And
and the experiment is like a life, like in that house, that's supposed to be your life. And we eventually see Angela breaking that too. The idea of like, it's supposed to be your life, where she's like talking to the kids out of character as soon as Nathan leaves the house, which is interesting. It's like, even though she knows she's on camera, it's like his presence is the only thing that's actually making her like play along, I guess you could say, or like take the experiment seriously. I love that they have like multiple montages where it's just her like spinning in a desk chair like a toddler.
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
It's like, what do you... Yeah.
So what about episode 4? Do you have anything... Well, do you have any closing remarks on episode 3, or is that...
I think I just want to...
up pretty well.
The only last little thing about episode 3 is I just want to reiterate how beautiful the last little moment of episode 3 is, where he turns the vegetable to hide the sticker.
That's another theme, is immersing in a fake lifestyle.
That's one of those things where I wonder if they did plan it, because like they had a shot just for the pepper, with the sticker on it and everything. That didn't seem like one of the fixed angles. So that makes me maybe they planned it. But I mean, regardless, I kind of don't care whether they did or not.
I think he planned it in his head.
Yeah, I think he planned it in his head in the moment, and then they like went and got a pickup shot later on.
Yeah,
that's what.
Like they were probably like, go get with Angela while she's undoing the packages or something.
Yeah,
and then he like just.
He might have even like put the pepper there in the first place to notice it. And I mean, regardless, it's like I feel like I couldn't ever say enough good things about even just this Pepper moment specifically. Because I feel like however beautiful you think it just is extra. There's like extra layers to it. Like the more I think about that one moment, the more beautiful it gets. Because like the pepper is like a perfect symbol for the show itself. And the idea of rehearsing itself. This idea of, it's not exactly fake, but it's a pepper from a store pretending to be a pepper from the ground, which is this whole thing of immersing yourself in a fake situation, pretending it's the real situation, in order to try to glean the benefit of the actual situation, which you get from a store-bought pepper, even though it wasn't from the ground. And it's just like, you can keep going with it.
Him removing that artifice. Too.
Yeah, removing the artifice. It so perfectly parallels how he's always trying to take the rehearsal one step further in immersion. And it's like, it segues into episode 4, which is where it really gets into like layers of depth.
Nathan's character could have turned it for himself to try and immerse himself more. It's like trying to be like,
immerse himself
no,
more.
it's not. It's
That's
not
the other thing I wanted
what
to get
I know
at.
it is.
Yeah, because like
he knows it's fake.
Yeah, and there's this constant like battle within
himself.
How
can he participate if he knows it's fake?
And then like as the show continues, each episode gets further in this idea of like he so desperately wants to be fully immersed, but he's like incapable of it. So he keeps going to greater and greater lengths to immerse himself and to like strip more away. It's like the mere fact that he is the creator is what keeps him from. It's, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
He's trying to immerse himself while also creating the environment that he's trying to immerse himself in. So it's impossible for him to completely disconnect from the fact that this is my show and I'm running it. And that's always in his mind somewhere, right? It's never, he can never just purely be in the moment. Like that idea of being in the moment as an actor, you're reacting, right? But he's always got in the back of his mind the overall show. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's like wrestling with that throughout. He's seeing the edits
and he's seeing, the whole thing being made. Yeah.
Like as the pepper moment happens, he's thinking like, okay, I can immerse myself more if I don't see the sticker. But he's also thinking it's a beautiful moment for the show because of this like symbolic nature of the pepper and the sticker on it. So the mere fact that he's aware of how much more immersed he could be, the fact that he's aware of that is taking away his immersion. You know?
Yes.
I think we're ready to move on to episode 4. This one's definitely one of my favorites, episode 4. So the premise of this one is he's still doing the thing with Angela, but he basically goes back to LA where his like actual home is. And it's interesting just to see him in his own home after being on the fake home for so long.
Whether it is actually his home or not.
Is there a part of you that's wondering, is that his home or is that a set as well?
That is me wondering. I don't think it's a set. I think it might be like someone's apartment or something.
Like an Airbnb or whatever.
It could be his home though. He would do it. I mean, I don't know.
In that promo for How To with John Wilson, where he does the TikTok house thing, he says that's his house, and that's a different house than what we see in this show.
Right. I don't think that the TikTok house one was his house.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to believe that one's the fake house. Because that house was like huge. That was like a mansion, which I'm sure he could afford it. But he seems more like the type of person who would have like a nice apartment, which is what
either a nice apartment or like a smaller house in LA. Well, because you also have to think these voiceovers that they do are after the fact of all this footage they took. So like him saying like, and then I went back to my apartment. And then it was, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, nice to get back to my house and be back to my house. In the moment, he did that. So maybe he did go back to his house. And then the footage of him at his house, later on, they tied that together with the voiceover. You know what I mean? Like that voiceover was done way
like a
after
recreation,
the fact.
Like the way a documentary will do a recreation to show an event that the cameras weren't there for. That's a possibility. Another possibility is that VO for something like that could have been scripted in advance, like when he's planning to go back home. That could be something that they write out in advance, and then they're maybe shooting the stuff in his house more like a narrative, more like an actual mockumentary. What I always wonder is like, are there points where he goes cut, and then they go, okay, now let's grab a shot where I'm looking at this thing, or I'm thinking about this, or is it just cameras rolling constantly
all the time,
never cut, all the time? Because like with digital the big cards, and you can like switch over cards and stuff. You can roll 24/7 without ever needing to cut. And I don't know if that's what he's doing or not. Like, he could just have camera teams following him around. Episode 4, I wanted to say, is, I think it's divided like almost perfectly in half, or like these two, I don't know about like time-wise, but two halves. One half is in LA and the other one's back at the house. And I loved how it was structured. The first half of like, I loved all the acting class stuff. I thought it was so amazing, and I could have just watched, I mean, you can kind of say this about any episode, but I could have just watched like an entire 2-hour movie that was just the Fielder Method acting class, which is the namesake of this episode. I love that the Fielder Method is literally just stalking. Like, that's his acting technique. And I love that he has his own acting technique, and it makes sense, and it is exactly what he's encouraging and like what he's been doing. You can see it in The Hero, that Nathan For You episode, where it's like exactly what he did before he got on the prosthetics, and he was observing the guy's speech patterns and his lingo and how he moved and everything, you know. That is a thing. Like, there are different acting methods and acting techniques. You know, people go to different acting schools and they have their own technique, and it all achieves sort of a similar end result.
Okay, you need to stalk and you need to learn your person or whatever. He goes to extreme extents of like, you need to be just as good at their job as they are.
Yeah.
So you're making those teeny tiny decisions that they're making. And so like the guy who's the butcher has to like actually learn and how to butcher. And it's like, how far can you actually get with method acting? How far do you need to get to sell the character? You know what I mean? Is there a point in which like you don't need to like really be them? Because I don't think they were by the end. I don't think.
Well, no, but here's the thing, right? The way that it's presented with the stalking is obviously ridiculous, right? Like, it's intentionally ridiculous, but that is a thing actors do. Like, there are countless examples of, like, when Jamie Foxx played a cab driver in Collateral, he went and learned how to drive a cab, and he spent, you know, like weeks talking to cab drivers and actually driving fares around in the back of a cab to like get a feel for it. And there's countless examples of actors when they play a role, they will go learn how to do the job for real. Like when Mickey Rourke was in The Wrestler, I think he learned how to, like you're talking about the butcher guy, he at one point his character works in a deli and he literally learned how to work all the deli equipment and everything.
Right. But you learn all the stress with the job too.
Exactly.
And so that really has
so it's already a thing where actors do, if they're playing a character who has a job, they will go and perform that job for a time and learn the ins and outs of it. So it's not as far-fetched as it like seems. The way that they manifest it is ridiculous, where they like do it sneakily. That's ridiculous. But when he sets up, he goes, okay, you now have a job and you're going to work this job for a week. That's a thing plenty of directors would actually have their actors do. I do think, as ridiculous as it seems, I do think that if those people in that class were to then perform as those people, everything they did would help their performance. If they're good actors and they commit themselves to it, it really would get better results. I'm very curious to follow up with that acting class. And I meant to look into it if there are like more classes like currently happening, the Fielder Method, like if they're still going on. Because if I had heard about that, you know I would have gone there.
That's the first thing I thought.
Like, I'm not an actor. I have no interest in like acting, but I would have to go to learn from Nathan Fielder's thing, you know? And I love that the show gets into it, which is a thing we had talked about before. In our other episode, we talked about the idea of like how interactions are different when there's a camera involved than if there's no camera involved. And I love that we get into that from Nathan's point of view, from the student's point of view, right? When Nathan becomes a student. Yeah. First off, I love when like he's got the wig and everything. Did you have to do like a double take? Like I didn't even recognize
I was thinking you were thinking that too, dude. At first I was like, wait, that's him.
I was looking at it for a second and I went, whoa. You know, it was that kind of reaction.
It's impressive, dude. It's so impressive.
It acknowledges that this is a class full of actors. And so they're doing it partly for the acting class, but also because they're on camera. They're on HBO cameras.
Right.
Like once Nathan immerses himself in one of the students, which we'll kind of double back and set that up. But once he immerses himself in one of the students,
the camera's right in your fucking face.
Yeah, he realizes what he's thinking as the actor in the class. He's now realizing, I can't just sit and absorb the guy's teaching because I'm on camera. How do I behave normally on camera? Which is one of the things
because he's an actor. Yeah.
He's not just a person on camera. He's an actor on camera, and an actor on HBO cameras. He's trying to get his his big break or whatever. Yeah.
Right, and so that's a really big deal, and so that's partially why, or mainly, I guess, why Nathan moves into the next steps, which is now kind of leaving his original idea of helping these people in the Fielder method and more directing it more as a personal thing for him, following and trying to understand what he looks like. It became introspective on Nathan as himself rather than...
And on, I would say, just like the nature of performance, like that's how brilliant it gets, the idea of like acting in general. The fact that it goes so many levels deep. He has the actor's primary is a guy who works at in a Cy Bowl place, right? The guy, his primary lives in an apartment with 2 roommates. So Nathan gets the actor in his class, an apartment with 2 fake roommates.
Yeah.
And then he does it under the guise of to immerse him, but he's really doing it to get the guy out of his apartment so that he can take his apartment to immerse himself in the character of the student.
And which he then goes into more and more layers.
That is
of
already
all
fucking crazy enough. I was laughing my fucking ass off. That was already unbelievable enough. But then he has fake Nathan start teaching the class that he's now taking his own acting class as a student. Then he goes, okay, I'm living in this guy's apartment, but this guy isn't living in his apartment because I got him out of his apartment. So I need to have the fake me get me out of his apartment. Well, and he like goes back in time. He like redoes day 1 of the class multiple times. It's so crazy. That's again playing with time and the way that like time is sped up in the house with Angela. But now it's like outside. It's like in the house, time is sped up, and outside of the house, time is a flat circle, my man. Like you can go anywhere. He can move around, and then kind of even in the house because he resets the kid at the end of this episode. He goes back from teenage Adam to
which we'll get back
6-year-old
to,
Adam. That's the second half of this episode. But and it's like this self-perpetuating cycle of like the reason why it goes one level. The reason why it keeps going an extra level deeper is because it went that level deeper previously. It's so hard to even wrap your head around. He has actor move into a fake apartment so that he can move into actor's apartment. But then that's not immersive enough because that actor doesn't live there because he had that actor move into the fake apartment. So he needs to, as the fake actor living in the real actor's apartment, he needs to have fake Nathan tell Nathan as actor that he needs to leave his apartment to go live into a second replica fake apartment with fake roommates. You see, that's how they are in the credits. They're fake roommates.
No.
It's fake roommates and then fake roommates. And then it just keeps going. It is so unbelievable. And it's
but psychologically he takes the first stage and he realizes that's not enough.
Yeah,
so then he goes, I need to go further. Does the next stage, and then he looks at it again introspectively and he goes, nope, that's still not enough. Like I still am not enough. He goes and works at another acai bowl place because he wants to experience everything that this one guy is.
And he redoes the conversations with himself.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, and so he's now just talking to his fake Nathan, who's also pretty good as a fake Nathan, I'll be honest.
And Nathan's like a hard guy to replicate because he is so deadpan, you know?
Yeah, because you know when he's doing the reenactment of him watching his fake self, all the other actors that are playing the fake students, those are all new actors.
Well, so I wasn't sure if the fake students was just like a second acting class and they didn't even know that the guy who's the actual teacher was one of the students.
That would be something he would do. That would be something
That's actually what I was thinking happened. Because like the way that they interact.
Can you imagine sitting and then seeing Nathan watching like this random guy sounding like Nathan?
Disguise. Maybe they don't recognize him. I don't know. But then they hear the guy.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, for that to work, they would have to not know who Nathan Fielder is to believe that other guy is Nathan Fielder and not recognize him in the class. But if they got people who didn't know him, then why would you assume that you go into a class, say the Fielder method, and a guy goes, hi, I'm Nathan Fielder, I'm going to teach you these classes. There's no part of you, if you've never heard of Nathan Fielder, there's no part of you that would go, that guy's actually an acting student, and the real teacher is the guy sitting next to me in the audience taking notes. Crazy would that be?
In a wig.
In a wig and like...
Can we talk about how the moment where he talks to like the showrunner or the AD, and he
who
talks
has him sign
as
the paperwork?
Nathan? Yeah, and he talks like as the student.
That was amazing because that was another thing we had we talked extensively about the contracts and stuff, how they get their appearance releases, and the fact that he puts himself in that actor's shoes and he's like, oh, it's a law. I don't have time to read all this, but everyone else is signing it, and they want me to sign it, and it's just commenting on so many different like little pieces of like
it's breaking
nature.
Down this type of show too.
It's
a social commentary on like reality television as a whole, and how the corporate businesses are. I guess how like the corporate fucking
the side of that
the
side
industry
of the
gets hold of these people. And I think that's something we talked about with Nathan For You, is that like I think he understands the business. He understands that this is taking advantage of this. He understands the loopholes that producers take advantage of in order to get people to sign documents, and he uses that to his advantage, even though his at some points is more innocent and other times just as offensive. But like this right here, this moment is a total social commentary on like
absolutely
the reality TV situation as a whole, and like how that industry, how that machine
and just like the
works.
Nature of appearance releases in general, because even for like other
it's
stuff.
so true. It's so true. It's like that's a lot of paperwork to read through, and like
and
the
you're
way
being pressured. You're like, okay,
so
we're ready to
great.
go. We're ready to shoot. So you don't really have time to read it. Yeah, that is the reality.
And they go like, "Are you done?" Like they don't say like, "Okay, you're done." They say like, "Are you done?"
Yeah,
like they give you that peer pressure,
that like urging, the peer pressure thing to it. And it's interesting that like that is what the show did, and then he's shining a light on it as this pressure.
Yeah, dude, that's how I feel when I have to sign the documents for like the shows that I've been a part of, and like as a worker, I like feel like, oh shit, like everyone's already done. Like I've never done. I've maybe done like back in the day when I was like, oh, I've never done this like the I-9 W-4 paperwork and stuff like that before. Like I've never done the 1090 stuff, right? And so I'm sitting there like trying to like, okay, like is this gonna fuck me over? Because all we hear about is, are we gonna get, all we hear about, I hear about a lot is like people getting fucked over by these production companies not paying them, and it's like all in contract, and it's like horrifying. But then at the same time, you're sitting there with 30 other people that are like finished and they're used to it and they're done and it's just easy, and the people say like, oh, it's fine, like you just do this, and it's real talk. It's serious. It's just exactly like he just described. It can be scary.
And then so it's commenting on like that side of the industry, and then I think it's also commenting on like child acting in general, which is interesting, more so in the
definitely more with
later
like
on.
Yeah, later on for sure.
I loved every second of this Fielder Method acting trip, and I wanted it to go on.
It was exactly that. It was a trip.
Yeah, it was a trip.
It was a total trip watching that shit.
It was also a literal trip away from the house with Angela, which becomes this whole thing of when he returns. It's like because of the sped up time in the house, it's almost like surreal, where because of that sped up time frame, he was gone for, what did he say, a couple weeks, 3 weeks or something. He was gone for, he kind of was gone for a while, but in the time frame in that house, he was gone for 9 years. Right? And the kid is now a teenager when he gets back. And I love that. I feel like we get his genuine reaction of like he actually, when he sees the teenager there, he's like, like he wasn't expecting it.
Do you think that's a thing? I wanted to ask you that. Do you think that it was a thing where like obviously Nathan knows where the show is going and kind of the ideas and stuff, but do you think that like his producers and his team with him did like Nathan tricks on him too, where like Nathan wanted to be so immersed that like
he was being manipulated by his team, like by his own request,
trying to immerse himself in the process so much that like they take care of things like that, like he didn't have to come back and go, okay guys, now we need to make them teens, like they just
absolutely
did that.
I think they totally did that. What I would guess is that he told them like, keep this experiment, keep it on these rails that we have set up, right? Like no matter what happens, follow this trajectory.
So there must have been part of him that like, even though he is running this show, like he's never done this experiment before, there must have been part of him coming home like, I mean, that he did just do a whole month of an insane part of the show. Like that was a lot of work. You know what I mean?
When he's like sleeping in that guy's bed and everything.
Like, that's a lot of work, right?
I was just like
he
jaw
was immersed
dropped,
in all of
like
that
the whole time. Yeah.
So like to come back to probably something that he didn't want to go back to with Angela, you know what I mean? like, and then realize also that his,
well, because I think that's a part of it. It is like that the acting class is like an escape for him in a way, and then that kind of parallels the like absentee father thing of like he wanted to escape this relationship, quote unquote, the like marriage to Angela theoretically, you know. And then he comes back and it's like the absentee dad thing. And I love how they played that. I found it so interesting that they broke the fourth wall on the teen actor, because the teen actor, he's following the rules of the experiment, which are just, you know, you want to be a kid and it's, you're in this like, you wanted to give him a good experience or whatever. And I love that we see him go to the actor and break character.
He was a good actor too, that teen.
He was, yeah, that guy's another guy who like, he comes out looking so good out of this.
He was
and
very
he's going to get some roles, I think, for sure, yeah. I would say the same about fake Angela when she comes in, I think she doesn't come until episode 5.
Fake Angela
she was great as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, she nailed like the voice and everything. Like you could close your eyes and think it's the real Angela.
I'll just go get my tea. I'll just take my tea.
Yeah.
I laughed every
over
single time she said tea. I was like, oh my God.
Well, and she had, I would bet that they showed her all the footage from like all the cameras in the house. So she's just like absorbing all this footage of the real Angela, you know, and just doing a great performance out of it. The actual casting on the show is remarkable.
It is.
The people they got together, especially because like it's almost entirely, or I think it is entirely all like they would say like undiscovered talent, like people who haven't had like their big break or whatever, you know.
What do you even say to these types of people? Like, how did they get such talent on such a weird,
such an
obscure
unorthodox
thing? Yeah, such talent on such an unorthodox thing. Like, what did they say to these people was going to be the show? Or like, did they say it was a show? Did they say it was an experiment? Like, wow, it's just, you're absolutely right. Like, such talent. Okay, so the storyline, so hopefully it's not spoilers, because honestly, you could spoil this, but the teenager dies. It gets into he comes home and realizes like this whole abandonment issue situation wasn't at play as it should have been, and then they have him break character, and he's like, okay, you know, let's try that. Can we try this again?
Yeah. And that is Nathan keeping it authentic. Like, that's him trying to keep it real. Because he feels that dissonance of like, oh, if I had been gone for 9 years, the kid wouldn't react like this. So he breaks the fourth wall in order to, it's like he destroys the immersion of this like full-time performance. He destroys the performance in order to make that performance more authentic.
And I think it was Nathan the character as much as it was Nathan Fielder.
Oh, absolutely,
the person,
absolutely.
The character was like, wait, something's off here.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't feel right. I just came back, and he's so sociopathic that like he just did all that stuff with that other thing, and now he's back, and he's just so able to like just get right back into things like with this experiment that he's like, oh nope, like something's off here, like. We got to try this again. Now, remember, you're supposed to be like, he understands emotion, but he can't
express emotion.
But he understands what it's supposed to be.
He's an observer of humanity and an orchestrator of reality, but he's not really a participant in either of them. And so I think part of the reason for him breaking the fourth wall and like telling the actor, this isn't.
Was there a piece of you that was kind of like, ooh, when he broke that fourth wall?
A little bit. Well, I wasn't expecting it, I'll say, because he had been very like strict about you're in character all the time. But I ended up.
He was still in the Nathan character.
Yeah, he broke.
But he broke the fourth wall for the
father
kid.
character.
Yeah.
But he didn't break character.
He broke the third character.
Yeah. He broke one of
second
his
character.
Yeah,
because the first character is Nathan. The second character layer is he's a dad.
Yeah, he never stops performing, even when he's not performing. The kid stops performing when he breaks the fourth wall. The teenager stops performing in that moment.
Oh, immediately.
But Nathan is still performing,
which
is really interesting.
For being that actor, the kid actor. Do you know the kid actor's name? He's the fake Adam, right? He's the teenager Adam.
I know he has like 3 names. He's
whatever.
One of those
Teenager
guys
Adam, right?
His name is Joshua James Bernard.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about morality a bit again in regards to Nathan, in regards to that moment with the actor again. Is like this is his first name's Joshua, right?
Yeah.
Joshua doesn't know that when Nathan's no longer the dad, he's still playing a character. That brings up an interesting thought for me is like, does anybody none of these people know that Nathan is playing a character? Only we kind of know that. And we think that. We don't know that. We think he's playing a character. Well, but it kind of ties into the whole lying thing.
Yeah.
With Angela is because, yes, Nathan as a character is a liar, but truthfully, Nathan Fielder and the show as a whole is lying in every single moment of the entire show. Is a complete deception.
Oh, like, yeah, it's deception for sure. Yeah.
Really. So if I met Nathan, even though I know he's not, like, if I met him in real life, it's forced me to believe, like, I have no idea what the fuck is going on with this conversation. If this is for a show, if this is him acting, if he's a method act, like, what is going on? You have
to be suspicious of any interaction with him.
You have to believe that might do some, like, how does Nathan Fielder, the person, feel about that? You know? That people will look at him as, like, who the fuck is this guy?
Because he's so linked to the character that he's basically always in character. And when you're always in character, is it really a character anymore? Which you could kind of say is like the guiding principle of this idea behind rehearsing extensively. To if you're is it really a performance? If you're so thoroughly grounded in it, can you repeat the performance ad nauseum,
right,
and make it truth instead of performance?
Right, that's a fair point. You look at someone like Conan O'Brien, who is playing a character and I'd say a heightened version of himself on his show.
He's himself, but he's on in performance mode.
I feel the same way, similar about Conan. Is like you don't really know who he really is, but it's not as detrimental, in my opinion, as not a person's career, but like if I was Nathan Fielder, you kind of have to sit with that. The fact that the art that he's producing is like people, no matter how, whatever he does, people are going to then look towards him. Even though he's playing these characters and all this bullshit, it's still, people are interested, I bet, in who he really is. Like that's and they're going to build this idea of who they think he is. And it's like, is he okay with that? Like, I wonder how he is as a person, you know?
I want to make sure we talk about the kid ODing.
Yeah.
And because I have a theory that
in other words, the cruel reality of what it's like to have abandonment issues with your father. You know what I mean? Like, and what it's like to be a teenager with no, you know, what is going on, which is his dad leaving from age, what was it, 6 to age
I think
whatever.
It was gone for 9 years, so whatever the time jump
it was like age 6 or 7 to age whatever. Because I think he says, do you want to go back to age 6?
Well, so there's that, and then there's also the point of like, it's partially happening, I would say it's mostly happening, the OD, so that he can reset to the younger kid. Like, I think that's the...
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. I think
you thought
so,
that was planned?
I think, not from the very beginning, but I think at a certain point he decides, I want to go back to the younger kid, and the OD is like the way to put a cap on that, a way to like reach a conclusion with that age, and then to go back in time. And it's almost like
I thought they were just rolling with it. Like they were just like, let's just go with this. Like this is kind of what would happen. Like, and then he got too far and was like, now what?
I think it was planned as a lead-in back to the younger kid, because then it connects to this like wish fulfillment thing of like a lot of people probably wish they could like go back in time and read and do things differently. And this show is like him experiencing that, but still under fake circumstances, you know? And then we see it in like smaller examples where like he goes back and redoes conversations. Like he goes back and redoes the Angela conversation. He goes back and redoes the goodbye with the child actor. He goes back and redoes the first day of class at the Fielder Method thing. So he's like going back in time to workshop things. Whereas the rehearsal started off as like pre-envisioning future conversations. He's now like flipping it to redo past experiences, even though that's
learn from
literally impossible.
Yeah.
But to learn them and like deconstruct them and to figure out, I guess you could say, how to approach a similar situation in the future, or like what could have been done differently.
Right, it's becoming,
like
the show starts for helping others and slowly becomes more and more introspective into helping himself.
What I think the other part of the OD is because if you remember at the very start of the episode 4, we hear Angela talking about how she used to have addiction problems and had a bad relationship with her father and stuff. And I kind of think the whole OD thing was built in to try to get Angela to face that like baggage that she has, to like bring her story full circle in the way that the gold digger guy had to face his story in a different context. Where,
but this time without really explaining that to the audience.
Fake brother, without explaining it to the audience that time, and without Angela necessarily reaping the benefit that she was supposed to from it. I mean, when she sees the kid having the OD, her reaction is definitely not what you might expect, given that she knows it's not a real fake. OD.
Yeah.
But she's still going along with it more than just like, she's not just like, this is fake, why are we pretending he's ODing? She's not like that.
She knows she's supposed to play it the way she would play it.
It's like a half measure, as Mike Ehrmantraut would say. That's another example of Nathan manipulating a situation to try to get a specific reaction out of somebody else. And in this case, it's the reaction of Angela. And I don't think he gets the reaction he was looking for. But then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
I also think it's entirely possible that he didn't shoot this in chronological order.
Oh, absolutely,
the episode.
I was thinking about that too,
it's entirely possible that they shot the 6-year-old and then Nathan just left.
To do the acting class or whatever.
Or didn't. And then just came back and like reset that scene or whatever. And like...
Yeah, that's totally possible. It might be possible that the thing, her talking about her father and the backstory, that could have happened like months apart from the kid actually ODing. And it's possible the kid OD'd just for those other reasons we touched on. But then in the edit, when they're crafting the narrative out of this abundance of footage, they discovered that parallel, and then they put those two in the same episode to make it to draw a connection between them. That's a possibility too. Regardless, like at any rate, it's kind of brilliant regardless. The one last thing I wanted to hit on at the very end of the episode is, did you catch that the EMTs who wheeled the kid into the ambulance at the end were students from his acting class?
No.
Yeah, they were. The two EMTs were both in his acting class. One of the EMTs is the guy that he pretends to be, the guy who he goes and lives in his apartment and everything.
Oh, no. I did not catch that. That's great.
Yeah, I thought that was a beautiful little, like, because this show has this wonderful knack for, like, hitting on all of these little things that it doesn't need to linger on, and it doesn't need to draw attention to them. It just hits on this little idea that speaks so much louder than words. And by having the acting students in the EMT, it's like drawing this extra line. It's hanging an extra lantern on this idea of performance. Right? By having the kid performing has a fake OD, and the paramedics with their real ambulance and all that are also performing, which also you could just say like it's also the responsible thing to not waste an actual ambulance's time. It's like, of course that would be fake, but the fact that it's his specific...
Well, he could have picked any acters, but the fact that he flew out these actors from
LA to Oregon to do that.
Yeah, it's just... Can we talk about how amazing the edit is in regards to that too? Like the editing in this show is so impressive. The way that they edit all these themes together so perfectly and tie these things together. The fact that we start the show with this idea of the Nathan Fielder method and we end the show with a little bit, I didn't even realize that, but that's awesome. It wasn't even like, I'm going to say on the nose again. It wasn't on the nose. It wasn't like, hey, and that's this episode.
I love that they didn't draw attention to it.
It's just beautiful writing and editing, and it's them knowing their show inside and out and just being immersed in it and being
all these little ideas.
This is this is their life. And so everything has got to be it's all about the show, it's not about the money. It's great.
And I love that the show doesn't feel the need to comment on it. I love that it's a show where it can take something so charged and loaded with like something that's so worthy of analysis, and it can just go here and just drop it in front of you. Just place it there. And it doesn't need to say anything. It doesn't guide you on how to think about it or how to feel about it. It just goes,
never does.
Here's something. Think about it if you want to. Obviously, we cannot say enough good things about this show. We are going to gush about it even more when we talk about episodes 5 and 6, aka the finale. I think that's going to wrap up this.
I would love to really quickly speak on, was it powerful? Was that ending moment as powerful for you as it was for me of him saying, can we go back to age 6?
Oh yeah, I thought it's a heavy hitting moment. I also loved the presentation of the teenager going in the top of the slide and the little kid coming out the bottom.
That was so great.
And I especially loved that they then showed the teenager like awkwardly climbing back out.
Yes.
Because
and
that's
hanging
the kind of
out with
show
like
it is.
the actors.
It will show you something so beautiful, and then it will like rip off the shiny coat of paint off of it,
and show the artifice.
Yeah. Because it's a show all about
just
the
actors
artifice,
sitting around,
It's a show about stripping away artifice and about revealing artifice. 2 more amazing episodes. Fantastic show. We're going to talk a whole lot more about the last 2 episodes. Thanks for watching. Go back and check out our other 2 episodes if you haven't seen them already. And join us next time for, I guess the next one will probably be the last time we talk about the rehearsal.
I don't know. We might do like a...
Well, when season 2 comes out. Thanks for watching, and so long.